before I get to the meat and the crux of this video, I want you to check the links that are in the description box that will serve as a point of reference. The person who I am going to dissect and deconstruct, and yes, this video is a dissect and deconstruct. His name is Nick Freitas. I think that's a Portuguese name. He's a state rep, a state delegate to Virginia, and he's been on he's on that Charlie Kirk foolishness. So he made a video called "They Don't Want a Civil Discussion," and I'm going to be here to dissect and deconstruct his argument, and only his argument.
There's another thing I wanted to highlight here, because I put out a I put out a post on X, and I basically said, like, look, when it comes down to people analyzing these shootings, because I do have a commitment to the truth, I do have a commitment to facts and evidence and coming to logical conclusions, and always ask the questions, how can we do things better? That has to be analyzed, but I'm not interested in the analysis from the left. And people were saying, well, okay, how does that make you any different than the left? If you're not willing to hear facts and evidence, regardless of who it comes from, well, then do you really have a commitment to truth? And you know what? Fair enough. But let me explain what I mean here, okay? Because I don't think this part can be avoided. I'm not saying that when a leftist makes a claim or a left-wing politician comes out and accuses somebody of something, I'm not saying that that makes it automatically wrong. What I'm saying is that for my entire life, I have seen the same pattern.
If you are looking at things purely from a right versus left or Democrat versus Republican, then you are surely missing the plot. You're surely missing the plot. You're missing the point. You're missing the, left wing, right wing. It's the same bird. Just saying.
Ever remember 2014, Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot. Remember, that was the big thing. Hands up, don't shoot. Michael Brown was a gentle giant. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't hurting anyone. Oh, wait. And then we find out later, no, he just robbed a convenience store. And then when a police officer doing his job asked him to stop, he actually charged the police officer and then tried to get the police officer's gun and then got shot in the process. But when it came out later that all of that took place, did BLM or left-wing politicians, did any of them come back and go, oh, you know what? Okay, we didn't know that. We didn't have all the information. Maybe we jumped to conclusion. No, they didn't do any of that. Hands up, don't shoot was their motto. And it didn't matter that it wasn't true.
Well, let's talk about Officer Darren Wilson and his confrontation with Michael Brown during the whole Ferguson, Missouri thing. Well, here's something that you conveniently, and put in quotation terms, left out. You conveniently left out the fact that Officer Darren Wilson is right-handed. How did Michael Brown reach in and grab the weapon off of Darren Wilson when Darren Wilson was in his car? Can you please explain that part? And no, I'm not here to defend the illegal activities of Michael Brown. Let's follow the narrative. Truth matters. Nobody's opinion.
How about George Floyd? The sole focus on the entire thing was the knee on his neck, as if that officer just deliberately wanted to kill him. Right? And then all of a sudden, George Floyd became wall art. He became like this folk hero when he was nothing of the sort. The guy had been a criminal, and a violent criminal at that. He had held up a pregnant woman at gunpoint prior in his record. The whole reason he was called there is because he was trying to pass counterfeit bills. The whole reason why he had been brought out of the car in the first place is he's been complaining about being in the car. Right now, again, does that mean I wanted Michael Brown or George Floyd dead? No. But the narrative was one thing, and the narrative was everything. And the more information that came out, nobody cared. Nobody cared.
This is where facts matter, not your opinion. Okay? You want to talk about narrative, right? You want to talk about narrative. Well, here's the narrative. Anybody can check this out. George Floyd was convicted in 2007 of aggravated assault, aggravated robbery case in which a gun was shown during a home robbery. But like it says, and if you actually read the case, Mr. Freitas, Mr. Delegate Freitas, I think that's your name, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. But there was no reliable evidence in court records or even, where a gun was held to this pregnant woman or where a baby was made a threat to. You see, if you want a civil discussion, you have to come in with a honest conclusion, an honest way. You can't ask people to be civil with you when you're not arguing from the position in good faith. So this is your second problem why you are not arguing from the position of good faith. You're just trolling and rage baiting.
What about Breonna Taylor, 2020, innocent woman sleeping in her bed, executed by the police? This ended up being the big thing for Rand Paul's trying to get rid of no-knock warrants. Now, listen, if you don't like no-knock warrants, fine. I think there's some times where no-knock warrants actually make sense, right? There's some times where, again, the police have to be able to operate with speed, and they have to be able to, not announce that they're coming in, especially if it's in a potentially violent situation where somebody might be willing to shoot at them. And Breonna Taylor was a perfect case of, the officers just went in there and started shooting and killed this innocent woman in bed. No, the officers responded to the suspect they were going after shooting at them. Now, again, if you want to say, hey, maybe no-knock warrants is a tactic that we should reconsider, fine. But she wasn't just, again, this wasn't a case of the police just randomly shooting people. How about?
And here where you messed up on when it comes to Breonna Taylor, right? Breonna Taylor, yes, Breonna Taylor was shot and was killed while she was in bed. And there was no drugs, no any of illegal activity inside of the place where she was sleeping in. There was no evidence, no signs of drugs, no sign of illegal activity going on. And her boyfriend, who was with her at the time, Kenneth Walker III, was a licensed, says again, a licensed gun owner in the great Commonwealth of Kentucky. Now, Nick, let's say this again. He was a licensed gun owner, and he was fearing of his own life. Now, legally, on a criminal level, he was found innocent of any wrongdoing concerning drug charges and whatever the warrant was going on in the warrant. He was accused, him or Breonna was accused of. And another thing, yes, and let's be true, let's be right. Yes, a judge did find Kenneth Walker III, the boyfriend of Breonna Taylor, guilty as wrongdoing. He blamed him for the death of Breonna Taylor. Other than that, there was no illegal activity by Kenneth Walker III nor by Breonna Taylor. So therefore, though, you got that part wrong because, like I said, research matters, facts matter, not your prejudice, not your political philosophy. Your opinion does not matter. Facts does.
Jacob Blake, unarmed man shot in the back by the police officer. Oh, until the body cam footage came out, and it's like, nope, he had a knife and he repeatedly resisted arrest. Repeatedly resisted arrest. How about Micaiah Bryant? A senseless teen shooting, right? This poor black teen girl was just gunned down by a police officer for no reason. Oh, then we saw the video. What happened? Well, she actually lunged with a knife to cut another teenager.
Yes. You got me. You got me. Yes. You got me, Nick. You got me right there on Jacob Blake and the other young lady. But you didn't include Oscar Grant, Jonathan Farrell, Eric Gardner, the beautiful Sandra Bland, Simone Massey, or is it Massey? Walter Scott, and the person who had the most potential, Bolton John. You'd include their names at the hands of violent police officers. And these people met their end unarmed and was not a threat to anyone. You can miss me with that.
Right. And then Renee Good. Renee Good was nothing more than a mother who was dropping her kids off at school. She was confused. She was trying to get out of there. Oh, wait, no, she wasn't. She was there with her lesbian wife. They were trying to obstruct ICE. And then she hit the agent that shot her.
What does Renee Good's sexual orientation have to do with this topic? Why does her sexual orientation, her not being married or to a man, have to do with this topic? Why bring this up in this? I want to know why.
And look, I just went back to 2014. We could do this for much longer than this. We see it every single time. Whenever the left thinks they can get something out of a shooting, they develop a narrative and then they don't care what the evidence is. They don't care. And the Renee Good shooting is a perfect example of this, because initially it was he feared for his life. She was just trying to get away. She didn't even hit him. And then the video came out where it showed, no, she did hit him. And oh, by the way, that officer had been dragged by a vehicle like several months before for someone that, had fled a scene.
Well, let's talk about the video, right? Let's talk about that video, because one angle show you the wheels was turned away from the ICE agent. And there's one thing you did not include in your analysis is the fact that it took 3 bullets to the face, to the head. And another thing, if this was as you try to make things as innocent as could be, why was medical aid was not rendered to Miss Good? Why was medical aid was being prevented? You never include that in your analysis. And also, let's talk about this too. Let's talk about this. Why does the training of ICE took 47 days as opposed, and let me say this right now, Nick, you are a member of the United States military. You are a member of the United States military. You know that training takes weeks, if not months. But ICE agents are trained within a month, 47 days tops. Those people was not trained to handle that type of job and philosophy. So you might want to pump your brakes on that because you're being intellectually dishonest. Well, let's talk about the main issue of illegal migration and illegal. Which president deported the most migrants, right? And let's look at the numbers because facts matter. This is according um, to the deportation data project. The link is in the description box, by the way. So let's see. Um, let's see. So Bill Clinton, 864,000. H.W. Bush, 2 million. Barack Obama, almost 2.7 million. Donald Trump, almost a million with 935. That's his first term. Joe Biden, 545,000. In the first 6 months during Trump's office, it's 128,000. So if you want to look at the total numbers of so far under Trump, it's 1,063,385 of the total number of deportations under Donald Trump, and that is less than what George H.W. Bush did, and that's less, certainly less, under Barack Obama. So the issue is not about illegal immigration. The issue, Nick, Mr. State Rep, Mr. State Delegate, I should say, the issue is the 14th Amendment, the due process, the Third Amendment, the Constitution. All right? Do you understand? Um, you were elected, you are an elected official, was an elected official. So you should know what that is. You know, the Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, you know, it violates what ICE is doing, going to people's homes, the search, unreasonable search and seizures. There's no warrants, and also the 14th Amendment with the due process, and that's something which you don't want to take um, acknowledgement, and that's really is the problem, which you don't seem to grasp. But anyway, let's keep it moving. Oh, and by the way, now I know somebody going to say Big J. It's just the Constitution is only for the American citizens. No, let's get this straight. The Constitution applies equal uh, uh, due process to anybody who's within the boundaries or in the jurisdiction thereof inside of the United States, whether that person is legal or not. When it comes to due process, let's say again, only when it comes to due process under protection of the law.
Did that change? Here's my question. If their initial response was it was a bad shoot, they shouldn't have shot Renee Good because she didn't even hit the agent with her car, right? If they said that, and then we show that the agent was hit by her car, okay, well then you would think logically, a reasonable person would then come back and say, okay, yeah, I didn't realize that. That does, maybe I still don't think it was a good shooting, but that does change the circumstance. Did any of them do that? No. And they never do, and I don't think they ever will, because it has nothing to do with the facts on the ground. In their mind, ICE are the bad guys, and whoever's protesting them, whoever's obstructing them, they're the good guys. I said it before. If Renee Good had hit that officer, dragged him, killed him, and then backed up over him to drive away, the left would have been cheering. It's not like then they would have said, "Oh wow, that was really extreme." No, they would have been cheering. And we all know it. And how do we know it? They cheered when Charlie Kirk was murdered.
Oh, you mean the same Charlie Kirk, the late Charlie Kirk, who said this?
And I'm not going to go on this endless soapbox defending Derek Chauvin. I think he's kind of not a great person. But I am also going to offer some context and some nuance about the death of George Floyd that no one dares to say out loud, which is that this guy was a scumbag. Now, does that mean it deserves to die? That's two totally different things. Of course not. But the idea that someone who had...
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational.
Over 100 people that have died in Texas Hill Country. What you are not being told by the media anywhere is that the death toll likely would not have been as high if it wasn't for DEI.
Your argument is disingenuous, saying that it's only those on the left that makes fun of those who have their lives taken, their lives sacrificed, when people like Miss Good right here says, you said you've been on Twitter, you see Twitter posts like this all the time. Don't act like you don't see memes like this that's being censored. Don't act like you don't see Candace Owens making fun of dead black men. Don't act like you didn't see how the MRA made a mockery of the Second Amendment right of Mr. Castile, Philando Castile. Don't act like you didn't see how people like, let's just say, people like Bolton John being made fun of, or people, those like Ahmaud Arbery being trashed by the so-called black conservatives among your group. Don't act silly, because what you just said is a disingenuous argument. Both sides are guilty of this. Okay? Do you understand?
So when I say I don't care what the left's argument is, it's because, one, they don't seem to care what the evidence are of an individual case. They don't seem to care. It doesn't bother them in the least. Two, they create the conditions which make situations like this far more likely. Right? They're not peacefully protesting on the side of the road. They actively get involved, push back, fight, obstruct, threaten, and not just threaten the agents, they threaten their kids. Right? So they create conditions where now an officer isn't even operating in a somewhat hostile, dangerous situation. No. There's an entire environment that's been created by the left, by the protesters, by the politicians, and by the media. And so now when you find yourself in one of these situations, you're far more likely to wonder, is that person standing on the side of the road just going to stand there and yell and scream in video? Or are they going to actively engage? Are they going to actively push me out of the way? The moment I turn my back, are they going to throw something at me? Are they going to hit me with something? You see how that works? Usually what we want is for a cop to go into a situation going, okay, bad guys in there, we've got our target, we've got it surrounded, now we're going to go in there, we're going to take down our target. Right? And they're not having to think about a bunch of randos that might show up and seek to perpetrate violence against them. And then what the protesters do is the protesters, one or two of them, maybe many of them, it just kind of depends, they'll engage in violent activity. And do the other protesters go, oh, well, the moment you did that, that escalated the situation? No, they don't do that at all. They're like, we were just protesting. No, you might have been just protesting. That dude wasn't. And this is the part where, again, they never They never take any responsibility for any of this. Ever.
Well, here's a question. Did the right take responsibility for this? No, really. Please tell me. Did the right wing of this country took any responsibility, and if so, did y'all hold any of these people accountable? Just saying. Just saying. Let's take a break, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a break. This is my QR code. If you're interested, you want to give me a donation, I am very appreciative if I receive a donation. And I'm not begging. That's if y'all are, want to donate. If you like videos like this, please donate. It's appreciative. But it's Cash App. Yep, Cash App to Big J. Text 2025. $ Big J TX 2025. Let's keep it moving.
Now, the other reason that I have just come to a point where I don't listen to leftist arguments very much, is this one right here. I'm going to show you some screenshots. This right here is characteristics of white supremacy culture. Well, what do we see on here? Either or thinking, quality over quantity, power hoarding, the written word, objectivity, individualism, a sense of urgency. You look on some more of these. Let's see if we can scoot in here a little bit more. So, a right to comfort. I don't know how that's a characteristic of white supremacy. But you see this thing like objectivity. Yeah, objectivity has to do with trying to uncover the truth by getting down to the bottom of what actually happened. And what these guys are saying is that to even think that objectivity is something that's good is an indication of white supremacy. Like, how am I supposed to take you seriously if that's your worldview?
I gotta say, I don't know where he got this from. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's hard for me to take what he put out seriously. But let's talk about what when people are talking about white supremacy, right? It's not about a person wearing a sheet. That's the extreme level of white supremacy. Let's talk about what is an example of white supremacy. We always been told that black people make 13% of the population, but yet make 50% of the crimes. It's single motherhood in the black community. It's the reason why we have riots and such. But yet, when it comes to Keene, Nebraska, no, excuse me, Keene, New Hampshire, 2014, the WTO riot in 1999, the Penn State University when Sandusky was arrested, the riots after when Kobe and Shaq won the NBA finals back in the early 2000s. I forgot what year it was off the top of my head. There's been numerous of riots that has nothing to do with the African American community, but yet we always blame with single motherhoods when it comes to white people doing riots. It's never broadcast. The family makeup has never been addressed, and so forth. These racial stereotypes are in the stories themselves, and it's mainly not only in the liberal media they do it on Fox News, Newsmax, the Glenn Beck, what's Glenn Beck's thing? I forgot what it is, but It's always, and even on FM, no, excuse me, AM talk radio.
How am I supposed to take you seriously when you don't even recognize logic as a legitimate system of thought that both of us can use equally in order to come to rational conclusions? So not only do you help create the conditions where situations like this can take place, because you don't just peacefully protest, you obstruct. You don't actually wait until sufficient evidence or facts comes in order to give your opinion. You immediately use it to whatever you think gives you the best political advantage. And this all goes to Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. Saul Alinsky encouraged the left to do this, and it's been their playbook for decades now.
Playbook, you say, right? Now, I know the famous Saul Alinsky argument that Glenn Beck has been spewing since the Obama years. But since I've mentioned Glenn Beck, well, let's talk about calling people communists, calling people Marxists, calling people anti-American because we don't vote Republican and we or don't have the quote unquote, the, in y'all's terms, the Judeo-Christian worldview. Well, who planted that into y'all's head? Oh, those we did for the last 35 years.
To intentionally lie and misrepresent the truth in order to gain political advantage. So if you are already queued up to do that, if that is your MO, well, then the reason I say I'm not going to listen to your arguments and I don't even care about them is because on one side, I know you don't mind lying to me. On another side, I know you will use any sort of situation you possibly can in order to achieve political advantage. And I also know that you think things like critical thinking is an attribute of whiteness. Well, then what sort of thinking are you using? If it's not critical thinking, if it's not objective truth, well, then what are you using? Right? And the answer is they use intersectional politics. I am a straight white man, therefore I'm the bad guy, right? ICE works for Donald Trump and they're removing immigrants, therefore they're bad. It doesn't matter that the immigrant that they might be protecting might be someone that came over here illegally and other than that seems to be a pretty good person, but still doesn't belong here, or someone that came over illegally and is trafficking children. The left doesn't care. Doesn't care.
For the S-th time, can you please release the files? You always been taught, though, that you're supposed to lead by example, right? You're supposed to lead by example. So shouldn't the S-th files be released in its entirety, unredacted, so we know who did what? Doesn't matter. But why have you, as a leader within the state of the Commonwealth, not state, the Commonwealth of Virginia, did not urge your fellow Republicans in your state government and in your congressional side, U.S. federal congressional side, to release the S-th files? Don't worry about who is. No, scratch that. That's not. That's a bad argument. If you're going to care about illegals molesting and trafficking children, then therefore you should also have the righteous indignation of what's inside that S-th files and what happened to the victims of S-th and his association with the current commander in chief.